welcome to another episode of the Loose Cannons Podcast. I am your host, Sammer, and I'm hanging out with my boys, Stank, Chicken Breast, and a special guest from the DraftNetwork.com, the one and only Trevor Sikkema. What's up, guys?
What's going on, man?
What's
Appreciate
up,
you guys
Sam?
having me back on.
Thank you for unmuting me and having me on the podcast.
Who is Chicken Breast?
You're Chicken Breast, buddy. I don't know. Trevor, do you know about his new nickname?
No, when you talked about the lower thirds before we hit record, I had no idea because I thought it was Poppy Latte, and then it was like something else before then. Chicken Breast's a new one to me. I don't know.
Well, what happened, there was an episode, like maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago, he brought himself in and he introduced himself as Chicken Breast, and we just went with it. I really don't know where it came from, but
I said
don't know.
Christian. I said Christian Perez, and I said
I clearly
and
heard
they
you say Chicken
interpreted it
I
as
heard Chicken Breast.
I said Christian Perez, Chris Perez, and they're like Chicken Breast, Chicken Breast,
Chicken Breast.
No, I said Christian Perez, Chicken Breast.
it's stuff. Hey, dude, it's great. It's great. But
I'm changing your name in my phone to Chicken Breast. I just
Thank you.
know.
Or you can change it to fuck Jameis as well. That works.
Oh!
Wow. I'll tell you off air what he has me on in his phone contacts listed under, but we'll save that off air.
That's fine.
Speaking of Chicken Breast, if you guys follow Trevor on Twitter, you know that Trevor's a big fan of barbecue, and he doesn't eat it like a fucking savage. He eats it with some class. And one of the rules that Trevor lives by is
3 sides minimum, baby. That's
gotta
how we eat barbecue. 3
sides minimum.
sides minimum.
Does
Now-
the cornbread count as a side? Like, can
No.
I get mac and cheese, collard greens, another side, and the bread? The bread is that's just something else. That doesn't count as a side, right?
Cornbread and biscuits do not count as a side. They come
That's a
with
beautiful
the
thing.
meal.
That's a beautiful thing.
okay.
I agree.
As it
Not that
pertains,
they're bad. Not that they're bad. Sorry, I just had to make.
No.
Not that I'm hating on cornbread or biscuits, but it does not count as one of the 3 sides getting to the 3 sides minimum rule.
Now,
Cornbread
Trevor,
is a staple. It's a staple.
Yeah.
You got to have it.
gotta have it.
Trevor, I know we have you on here to rank, draft picks and things like that, but can we talk about sides in regards to how you rank them? Cobblers, things like that. Do you have a ranking system for those things?
I'm like a staple. Okay, if there's mac and cheese, I'm normally always getting mac and cheese just because I'm a sucker for it and it's good.
White cheddar, do you have a preference?
No, I'm going normally like yellow. I'm not the biggest like white cheddar mac and cheese fan. I don't know if you guys have had some bomb white cheddar mac and cheese. But
I make one.
Okay, then I need to have some of yours because I haven't had a really good white cheddar mac and cheese. Then I'm normally going with some sort of staple like veggie. Like I'm always a sucker for collard greens. So if it's on the menu, I'm getting collards 100%.
Do you add vinegar?
Speaking my language.
I've never added vinegar
No.
like when I order them out. No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Is that the move?
It's the move.
It's not the
100% the move.
Don't do it, Trevor.
He
talking
got
about?
that.
It's
He got
definitely
that
the
from
move.
Cracker Barrel. That
No.
little vinegary.
No.
pepper thing. That weird
Cracker
shit.
Barrel.
That
A
weird
lot
shit.
of barbecue places will have vinegar as one
Like
of the
straight up
sides.
vinegar.
It's straight up vinegar, and you add it, or you can do hot sauce. I mean, a lot of people put hot sauce on
of
their
course.
greens.
Hot sauce.
But vinegar on collard greens is the shit.
And then I'll go one of 3 things depending on if I've heard good things about one of these sides or what I'm feeling that day, and that is baked beans, potato salad, or coleslaw. I know everybody hates on coleslaw, but I really don't mind it. Sometimes it could hit. It's not as big of a hit rate as the other 2, but I'm not a big coleslaw hater, so you won't find that.
Coleslaw is a Chris Godwin of barbecue sides, man. I don't know why people hate on it, and it's just it's a gem. It's a
You
gem.
should hate. See, you take the pulled pork, right? You take the little bit of bread they gave you. Then
Yeah.
you make a little base with the pulled pork. Then you get some of those baked beans, right?
Coleslaw.
And then you get some coleslaw for texture and
thank
crunch.
you.
and
Yes,
you fold
that's
it,
the way.
And then you have the bite. That's the bite, man.
So
That's
good.
the bite.
Fuck
So good.
That's
coleslaw.
the one.
Fuck
That's
coleslaw.
crazy.
Fuck
No, I'm
anything.
getting
chicken breast.
Anything mayonnaise based. Fuck that. Potato
See,
salad.
a lot of people say that. I
What?
can't.
Hold on. You're like a white dude. How do you not like mayo?
No, not only am I white, okay, but I come.
You're
from I
anti-white.
come
You're
from-
anti-mayo white guy.
What's that
I
mayonnaise
come
shit?
from a
That
long
sweet shit,
line
Trevor?
of Jews, and my grandmother made like the best potato salad. People will come from different
No,
cities to
I
get
don't
her
believe
potato
it.
salad.
Don't
Don't
believe
touch it. Has mayonnaise. Didn't want it.
Weak.
She'd be like,
hold on.
She'd be
So
like,
weak,
Adam,
bro.
come get your potato salad, and I'd be like, Grandma, no, I don't like fucking mayonnaise.
You're so weird, dude. But listen, I asked him about his barbecue rule so I could go into the draft talk, and then we dove into that nonsense instead. But what my point of it was, my whole point, as it pertains to that rule, in regards to the Buccaneers draft, how do you rate the Buccaneers' newest additions in regards to the main course and then the three sides?
Who's the mac and cheese?
Who's the mac and cheese?
The mac and cheese is
good,
incredible.
I'm actually glad that you didn't prime me with this question before we logged on, because I probably would have spent the next 2 days trying to perfect and analyze which guy was which dish.
Why would we prep you? This is not professional.
This is true. I mean, I'm on with a guy named Chicken Breast for crying out loud. But
he's a staple of the show.
Not you, Trevor. Not you too. Jesus.
The staple of this class, without a doubt. I mean, it's the obvious one, but it has to be. It's Tristan Wirfs. The fact that they got Tristan Wirfs where they did at number 13, I mean, they were lucky. Going into the draft and during draft week, I was one of the people preaching, saying, hey, look, the Bucs are one of the few teams in the NFL that only has, like one or two real needs that are super pressing needs. Not that they couldn't improve the roster overall with more than one or two picks, but really pressing needs that would help them out. And that was offensive tackle. They were sitting there at number 14, and I was trying to do the math, and I was like, man, I'm not so sure it's to the Bucs' advantage for them to stay at number 14 and think that one of these top four guys is going to last all the way to that round. But they were patient. They played the draft the way that they needed to. I think the first offensive lineman went number 4 overall was Andrew Thomas to the New York Giants. And then I think the real key here is the Los Angeles Chargers didn't go offensive tackle. But then when the Arizona Cardinals also did not go offensive tackle, that was when the Bucs knew that they could probably sit back and still get a good one wherever it was. They ended up moving up one spot, everybody knows, but still to get him within that range was important. And I think it was really good on the Bucs. And we know that Bruce Arians has his intel and his connections with the Arizona Cardinals. I'm sure that they were in constant communication, not just to talk about a potential trade up to number 8, which I believe there were trade talks there with them at number 8 and also with the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 9. But I think they were gathering intel and basically saying like, okay, even if we don't have to trade up with you at number 8, basically, like, what are you guys thinking? And they came to the conclusion that if Isaiah Simmons was on the board, that's who their pick was probably going to be. And at that point, I think the Bucs knew that it would be safe to at least roll the dice to see if they could get one of these guys later in the draft. And so I would say that for sure, the main course was definitely Tristan Wirfs because it all had to be built around that. But the main three sides, Antoine Winfield Jr., Tyler Johnson, and then Keyshawn Vaughn, right? I mean, like, they're getting weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and then they got a lot smarter in the big area that they needed to on the back end safety. So that would be the main course in the three sides. I know it goes in order from how they picked it, but that's how I'd shape it up.
Now, in reference to it, you said that there was probably some trade talks and stuff like that. Did you see the Peter King article where he sat in on the draft?
No, the one after the draft, I didn't get to read that one. No,
he chronicled the entire. He was allowed to sit in and watch Jason Light do his thing in the first round, and he chronicled it literally minute by minute. It was like minute by minute, right? Stank?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And he said that at one point,
things I've ever
it was
read
awesome.
As
it was awesome.
relates to the draft, it was like you were in the boardroom. You actually
in the room.
experience how it rolls out.
At one point, he looked at his assistant, whoever it was, and he's like, I think he even cursed. He's like, does anyone want to make a bleeping trade? Like, he tried to give up the 3rd and 4th round pick. At one point, Peter Keevan said he was trying to give up next year's number 1.
Yeah, to Carolina, wasn't it?
To Carolina, I think.
Yeah.
But so I get Trish Wirfs is good, but there's, the short arms and the overstepping and this everything that was breakdowns. In reference to where he ranks on those 4 and why they were trying to trade up so desperately, do you still think they got the guy that they wanted, or do you think that they were going for Jedrick Wills or somebody else?
I mean, if you're asking me, do I think Tristan Wirfs was like number 1 on their board? No, I don't. I think that Tristan Wirfs was probably 3 or 4. I don't know if it said exactly in that article, but there's a reason why they were. There's a reason why they were looking to move up, and I knew that days leading up to the draft that they were actively calling teams trying to move up, and I ended up predicting 6 trades in my final predictive mock draft. There ended up being none in the top 12, which I was super shocked at, because even in a year where, all right, so things are a little bit weird with the virtual draft, you're not as comfortable in your environment, you might not be as prone to make a deal. I figured that there were going to be some GMs who thought, okay, this is kind of an outside the box format. I'm going to try to take advantage of some of these other GMs. I'm going to try to be the aggressor and push them and see if I can get some good deals out of it. And Jason Licht not having a ton of needs, I thought was, again, a guy who was poised to move up and select the offensive tackle that he exactly wanted. And I didn't think that they were ever really going to be able to move up with Carolina, because anytime you're trading with a team in the division, you kind of have to overpay to a level that you wouldn't want to. If they offered next year's first rounder to get up to number 7 and Carolina said, no, that's bad by Carolina. That's terrible by them, because that would have given them obviously 2 first-round picks to work with when they did not pick their franchise quarterback in this year's draft, and they're going to take it in next year. So that was really shocking to me. I know that there were talks of certain players on the roster that they were thinking about moving to Jacksonville for number 9, but I was just as shocked as the phrase, does anybody want to make a bleeping trade? Because I was there too. I thought that this is what was going to happen. I thought that there were going to be a lot more trades in the top 12, and they just weren't. GMs weren't willing to do it. They were just going to go with the guys that they had on their board, and they weren't going to risk it. And so I think, unfortunately, you saw teams like the Buccaneers not be able to move up any further than they did. I think that they were happy, right? I mean, I think they got a guy that they were happy with. Maybe not the happiest, but remember, we heard the Atlanta Falcons were trying to move up. I don't think that was a smokescreen. I genuinely think the Falcons were trying to move up really far, and just no team wanted to move up. Like, nobody wanted to do a deal. And so you guys telling me that about what was happening in the Bucs war room, that makes perfect sense with the way that it all fell to place.
And I don't think the trade was that bad. People were overreacting. I get it. We had to give up a 4th rounder, but hindsight now and seeing that Joe Staley was retiring, I mean, the Niners could have literally just said, "Hey, give us a 4th, or we're going to take your guy here." It's that simple.
Right? No,
so they had to do it. They had to.
Right.
Do it.
That's the thing too. Is that anybody who was freaking out about them losing a 4th round pick, now that hindsight's 2020, the Niners damn well knew that Joe Staley was going to retire at that point. They could have picked Tristan Wirfs. Very easily could have picked Tristan Wirfs, and then the Bucs would have been
fucked.
Screwed, right? I mean, like they wouldn't have had anybody. They would have been starting Joe Haeg, right? So I think that it all worked out pretty well for him, considering everything that happened.
Hey, Trevor, talk to me about Tristan Wirfs a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you put in hours of film study on that class of tackles. What's your personal opinion on him? I mean, he seems to check a lot of boxes for me. The guy was a wrestler. I love when my lineman wrestled. I mean, he wasn't just a wrestler. He was a state champion, in heavyweight class. He's
jumped out of a
stupid strong.
Yeah.
I mean, and broke records at the combine for agility records, jumped out of the pool, all those things. What's your take on him as our pick?
Yeah, just jumped out of the pool is the new jumped out of the gym phrase, right? Because of we saw the video with Tristan Wirfs. Wirfs came in as my number 3 offensive tackle within that big 4 area. And the reason is because, as you were referencing there, kind of his higher ceiling, he is a ball of clay right now. He certainly still needs to be molded by the right offensive line minds, but he's got all the tools to be exactly what you want to mold him into. He has that athletic ability. He has that high ceiling. I think he's a smart player, and I think he's got functional athleticism. And I think that's really important to differentiate, because some of these guys they know how to kill athletic testing. Like, they know how to put up really good numbers, but sometimes it just doesn't show up in the film. You could pop on literally any game of Tristan Wirfs, and you can see immediately this dude knows how to move. He is very balanced. He has a lot of core strength that comes from that wrestling background, and you love that about him. I think that he is still a good amount of ways away from playing at a high level, even as a right tackle. But getting him in a situation with an experienced offensive line coach like Harold Goodwin, like the situation that the Bucs have, is really important, because this is a coaching staff that has a lot of experience. And I think that they know what they're doing. If Tristan Wirfs went to a coaching staff that was maybe more of a younger staff, or just a staff that hadn't been together for a long time, maybe didn't know exactly what the head coach or the offensive coordinator was looking for most with their offensive linemen, it'd be a little bit different. I think the chemistry in the coaching staff, the experience and the knowledge that they have, can take what Tristan Wirfs is, and even looking at what he is not right now, it's favorable to say that he can become what you would like him to become in the future. And so I think that Tampa was a really good spot for Wirfs, even if he is a little bit of ways away from being a starting caliber offensive tackle in the league.
Comparing him to DeMar Dotson, upgrading the run game, downgrading the pass game in regards to pass blocking?
Immediately, for sure. I mean, like, Wirfs is going to be more of a bully in the run game just because he's got the young blood to him, right? I mean, he's not afraid to get up in defensive linemen's faces and push him and anchor him and do the things that kind of these younger offensive linemen don't mind doing. He's not going to be experienced in the passing game just because when you're pass blocking, a lot of it is about what you have seen before. A lot of it is about experience. It's about knowing what the defensive lineman's going to do. It's about years of experience of seeing different kinds of moves and where guys like to put their hands, and also knowing your own weaknesses. And that's another thing too, when you're playing offensive line. These guys on the other side of the line on the defense, they're all strong. They're all fast. They all know what they're doing. And you don't even know your own weaknesses as an offensive tackle prospect yet. You might not know, hey, this is something where I get exposed a lot, and you're kind of going to be learning that as well. So offensive line is without a doubt a learning experience. So in terms of pass blocking, it's going to be a little bit of a downgrade from what DeMar Dotson brought, just because Dotson was so savvy even at his higher age. But in terms of a run blocker, I think you're going to get a much more willing guy and a bigger bully when it comes to those runs.
In regards to him being in regards to him being this ball of clay that they're going to mold, do you foresee them preparing him to take over as left tackle eventually, or are they going to continue to mold him at the right tackle and deal with that scenario or that situation on the other side when it presents itself or when it comes up with Donovan? Because they have the ability to mold him. Would they take the advantage of doing it now as opposed to later, or just kind of let it run its course and let him learn the one position?
Yeah, I think a lot of Bucs fans would be kind of like screaming like, oh, groom him to be the left tackle. We don't like Donovan, all this. But like, I can't see that happening. They have they have Donovan Smith on the team for a reason. I think that he's going to be their left tackle in 2020. I just don't think that it's going to happen. Especially when you look at their all-in plan for the next 2 years, it makes more sense to make Tristan Wirfs the best right tackle he can be, because that gives them the best immediate impact, and it allows him to have the highest impact on what is the next 2 to 3 year window while Brady is there. So long term, maybe like 2-3 years down the line, you might say, okay, groom to be the left tackle. A lot of people are saying like, oh, just kick Donovan Smith over to the right side. It's just not that easy. I don't think Donovan Smith's going to want to go to the right side at all. And I think that there's a lot more that goes into it than just a coach telling a player like, oh, you're going to play right now. There's a lot more factors that kind of go into that. And so even though I think some fans would say, hey, this is a guy who, like you just mentioned there, he's a ball of clay right now. Why don't we mold him into a left tackle instead of a right tackle? I could see why you would want to think that. It's just not going to happen. They get the most out of him if you allow him to stay at right tackle like he has been at with Iowa, improve his blocking skills there, and just giving him the chance to have the highest impact on the team.
Trevor, in your experience, though, why I started shaking my head no immediately, and me and Stank talked about it too, has there been much success with a left tackle being his height and his arm length?
No, and so when you have a left tackle, you want to be able to put him on an island, right? When you shift protection over, you want your left tackle to be a guy who can win one-on-ones no matter who the opposing team's pass rusher is. And length isn't a kiss of death, but it certainly doesn't make it easier on you when you can get out leveraged by some of the better and longer defensive ends in the NFL. And so that's why also I think that Tristan Wirfs is better as a right tackle, because he's going to get more help. He's going to be more on the back end of slide protections. He's not going to be left on islands. And I think that that's really good towards what you would want from him, because that also allows you to then maybe move him or get him outside more or lead the charge on zone blocks and things like that. So I just think that overall right tackle gets you the biggest return on investment as opposed to playing him over at the left tackle.
You know what's interesting? We have our defensive line is going to be, a good learning pool for him. I mean, you have JPP, who is a freak of nature, long, lean, can beat you with power, can beat you with quickness, leverage. Then you have Shaq Barrett, who's the lighter guy, shorter guy, speed guy. And then, you have our tackles like Vita. Like, he's going to get to see all those guys and get reps. Yeah, and Sue, and get reps against all those guys. And they obviously, the power guys is something he probably is going to excel against the power guys, because it's more of a wrestling match. He's likely going to struggle against JPP, and maybe he does well with somebody like Shaq, because he's a much stronger guy and with quick feet and good agility.
Yeah, I think that he's going to be thrown into the fire, no doubt. But again, that kind of goes back to, I think there's going to be certainly a learning curve for him because it's also a good defensive line that he's going up against in practice. But I think fans also got to realize that you might read some training camp reports of him looking a little bit rough, but like, that's okay. You've got to understand that this is the learning curve for him, that he's going up against a good defensive line, that Todd Bowles is not going to show him any mercy in practice because he doesn't want Wirfs to see anything in the game that he hasn't already seen in practice. And he knows that training the offensive line to be ready for everything that his defense is going to throw at him, that'll only make the team better when it comes to Sunday. So I just want people to and fans to realize that Tristan Wirfs might struggle a little bit early on, but I still have faith that he could develop, especially in this spot with the Bucs and this coaching staff.
So help me out here, Trevor. We've talked about it all off season. We've talked about it during the season. We talked about it the off season prior. Do the Bucs just not like running backs?
I knew this was going to be a running back question. I knew this was going to be a running back. The second I opened with that, started talking about this the way that you did. Yeah.
But listen, I'm gonna before I make my point, I love Antoine Winfield. I love the pick. I legitimately love the pick. Mm-hmm. But did they just see their version of the honey badger and somebody that can move into the nickel and all over the place and just a joker on the field that Bowles absolutely fell in love with, and a need because we needed a free safety. And that's why they passed on the running back? Or do they just not like running back? And we can touch on Vaughn and you can break it down for us. But, and again, I love the Antoine Winfield pick, but I don't, why?
When we were coming up to the 45th pick in this draft, it was pick number 41 and 42. I tweeted out, I was like, if J.K. Dobbins makes it to 45, and then pick 43 and 44 rolled around, and I went, if J.K. Dobbins makes it to pick number 45, and so the eyes kind of got a little bit wide there. I was on a live stream while all this was going on, and Jordan Reed, who is my co-host for that broadcast that we were doing, and a colleague of mine over at the Draft Network, he said, look, are they going to be locked in on a running back, or is there anyone that's left on the board that you could see them picking? And we were kind of having this conversation right around pick 43, 44. And I said, you know what? If Antoine Winfield Jr. makes it to them, he is the one player that I could see them prioritizing over a running back, because I really do think that it was going to be a running back pick if it wasn't Antoine Winfield Jr. But everything I know about Jason Light and how they prioritize players and the things that they love about guys, I mean, it's Winfield to a T, okay? Football background, heavy, okay? High football IQ, has the ability upstairs, which is really important, to play all three positions. We often talk about athleticism being the base to be versatile on the defensive. Really, I guess anywhere, any position. We always say, like, oh, he's got the athleticism to play a bunch of different positions, or he's got the size to play a bunch of different positions. Antoine Winfield Jr. has the football IQ to play a bunch of different positions, and that's really, really important. And so I knew that they would prioritize that. I said he would be the only one that they would think over a running back, and he was the pick. And it's hard to hate on the pick because they already have athletes on the back end. They already have Jordan Whitehead, who I think is a really good athlete. I think Mike Edwards is a good athlete as well. Justin Evans, if he comes back, I mean, athleticism is his calling card. What they don't have is they don't have that field general back there. They don't have that guy who could recognize what's going on in the pre-snap, who can read the quarterback's eyes, who can truly see things before they happen. I think that's really important for a safety position, and that's what Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to bring for them. And I think that they saw the value of that being higher than any of the running backs, and so that's why they made the call. And honestly, as much as J.K. Dobbins or Cam Akers, I think, would have really helped out this running back room, this is the decision that I would have made as well. I would have gone with Antoine Winfield Jr.
It doesn't help.
Of all those picks that we had after obviously the first round, after you watch the film on this kid, I was most excited about him, especially with how defenses are now rolling around to using more 3 safety looks to kind of combat those athletic tight ends.
Bowles uses 4 and 5 safeties.
Yeah, like, dude, I saw this and I was like, holy shit. Like, I am pumped to see this kid play in a Bucs uniform as opposed to anybody else we drafted. And it's pretty close. There's another guy that we drafted that's real close. Like, he's real close second. But this kid just everything you watch on him, he just fits so well. And you're just like, oh, man. And they still got a running back in the third round. You're like, all right, cool. I'm happy with it. And then, I know Chicken Breast saw the film on Vaughn. You don't feel that bad.
Though, and we'll touch on Vaughn in a second, but what got me more excited about Vaughn was his pregame speech and his demeanor was compared to Richard Sherman. I'm like, I'll take a cup of that in our locker room right now. But you mentioned that football IQ for Winfield. You mentioned athleticism. You mentioned ball hawk. You mentioned all that stuff. I think another part, Trevor, too, is, and as Coach would say, Coach VA, his give a shit meter is really fucking high. That kid gives a shit, and that matters in that room, obviously.
It's all football. I mean, that's all he's ever known, right? I mean, his entire life has been football, and it hasn't been football to the point where sometimes you could tell that guys are a little burnt out on it. Like if they have a football family background, they make it to the NFL, and it's almost like, okay, this is what my life was built out to be. Like, this is just what I'm supposed to do. I don't really like football anymore, but this is just how I'm supposed to make a living. This is what my dad did, or this is what my family member did, or things like that.
Todd
you don't see that
Marinovich.
with you don't see that with Antoine Winfield Jr. You really don't. You see a kid who loves the game. You see a kid who's really excited. I love getting to talk to him at the podium and just kind of sitting by and hearing him answer questions. And he answered all the stuff, right? I mean, like, oh, tell us about your dad. Tell us blah, blah, blah. And he kind of like smiled. And he's like, I was fortunate to be able to grow up with a dad who was so successful in the game that I ended up loving to do. But like, I'm my own player. I'm not going to be my dad. And I think that that's really cool about him as well. It was, like I said, guys, this was the only pick that I think that Tampa was going to take over a running back because, Christian, you and I have been talking about this over text message for months. What have I been telling you? 45 is what? It's a running back. It's a running back. It's a running back. And when you and I talked about trade possibilities for Tampa and you would talk about, hey, what's it going to take to move up this or that? I said, look, the Bucs can do whatever they want. They can't lose pick 45 because that has to be a running back for them. It has to be a running back. And then here we were, two of them still really good ones on the board in J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers, and we're at pick 43, 44, and I go, Antoine Winfield Jr. is still there. They should pick him with 45, and they ended up doing it.
I think the Chiefs screwed us over, honestly.
Screwed you over.
Hold on. When the Chiefs did that, because there were some people that thought that he would go at the end of the first, and I'm not just stuck on him. I'm talking in general. Because when that started, then the run started in the second round. Swift came off quick, then Taylor came off quick. I think if Swift or Taylor were there, I think it's. I don't know if they pass on Winfield, but I think it's a different conversation. They may not have liked Dobbin as much or Cam. You know what I mean? I think the top three guys was Clyde, Taylor, and Swift.
Yeah. I think you're right. If Edwards-Helaire were there, I think it's a different story. And I think that Edwards-Helaire is probably the pick.
Agree.
But I don't know if any of the other ones it would have been a pick over Winfield Jr. I think Clyde, yes, but I'm not so sure even Swift.
Dude, the cool thing that we've noticed, too, since Bruce has arrived here, there's sort of been this template that you see from his players. The guys he drafts are big time, like, give a shit, not like they love to win, but they hate to lose type of guys. Like almost every single one of them. I mean, starting with Matt Gay all the way down to, every single player that they've drafted since Bruce has been here is
everything starts with Matt Gay.
Give a shit, like all of that. Like it's very imperative. And you can tell that that's the guys that they gravitate towards and those are the guys that they like. Last year, all those guys were team captains. Like that wasn't on accident. I'm most excited to see what this kid does, but in your opinion, is he maybe the player that ends up having the most impact in his rookie season for this team?
And before you answer that, piggyback off of that, he's talking about Winfield. And is his comparison the Honey Badger?
No.
How's that piggyback?
Honey Badger. Honey Badger had a lot more athleticism to him. Like he was, I feel like Tyron's mentality is wild. And I mean, like Tyron was starving for takeaways. Like when he was on the field, this dude was going after the ball like an absolute lunatic. And you loved him for it because he had a ton of range on the back end and he was always going for the biggest play possible. I think Antoine Winfield Jr. is not as athletic as Tyrann Mathieu was. And I also think that he's more cerebral in his approach. He's not as, I don't want to say reckless, because reckless sounds like really negative, but like Tyron's crazy, you know, like Tyron is nicknamed Honey Badger for a reason, whether it was getting interceptions or forcing fumbles or whatever. He wanted the football, like desperately wanted to create turnovers. He was starving for them. And I'm not saying that Antoine Winfield Jr. doesn't have ball skills, but he's just, I have a hard time comping anyone to Tyrann Mathieu because he's so unique. And so I will just say that without the Tyrann Mathieu comp itself, he can have a big impact and it can be versatile, kind of like we've seen with other safeties in years past. When it comes to him having the biggest impact, I'm going to say no, because that answer would be reserved for Tyler Johnson. But I think that Winfield Jr. has a chance to play like right away, given what the safety room is. And the reason why I'm a little hesitant on saying that he has the biggest impact is because defensive back is really tough in the NFL. Corner is the hardest other than quarterback. I think corner is the hardest, but then safety is too, man. It's really tough to just step in and play safety top notch day one. And Winfield Jr. is the football background, I think, acclimate for the NFL curve as well as a lot of safeties can, but I would just be more reserved there because it is so hard to adjust to the speed of the game and adjust to some of these pro quarterbacks and adjust to some of these really, really smart offensive coordinators the way you can right out of the gate, where when you play, say, running back, or when you get to play the wide receiver position that Tyler Johnson's going to get to play next to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, that's going to yield a more favorable result in year one.
All right.
I was surprised to hear you say Johnson, not Wirfs. You're that high on Tyler Johnson? Obviously you are.
Tyler Johnson's my boy. Going into the 2019 season, Tyler Johnson was one of my top 5 wide receivers, and throughout the whole year, man, I understand he doesn't separate well. He's unorthodox in his approach. When you watch him on film, you kind of almost go like, man, this shouldn't work for you as much as it does. But the thing is that it does, and it has for the last 3 years. He was the go-to guy for the Gophers in their passing attack. He was always the player that when they needed a clutch performance, he was the guy that they were throwing the ball to. He was often coming down with it. He was the big play guy. His offseason was really confusing to me because he was signed up to go to the East-West Shrine Bowl, which I thought was a shock because I thought he should have been a Senior Bowl guy. He ends up being on the roster for the East-West Shrine game, and then 2 days before the practices kick off, his name's removed from the roster. And I couldn't find out why. I was like, did he get hurt? Like, what? Did he just, like, not want to show up? I don't really understand what happened because Tyler Johnson all season was my boy. And so I was excited to see him. He would have absolutely cooked everybody at the East-West Shrine game. And so I was excited to see him do that. But he drops out of that. I don't think he even got a podium at the combine. I think he was just at like a table. He didn't even get a wide receiver podium. And so it was just a really strange offseason for Tyler Johnson. And there's a reason why he fell to this point. But for a situation where you can get the most out of what Tyler Johnson does pretty well, I have faith that it can be in Tampa because, like I said, he's not going to sit here and have to be the wide receiver 2 for any team. Like, he gets to be behind Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, sometimes even Cam Brate. Like, there are other receiver options in here, and they just get to throw Tyler Johnson in. And when they do, he's not going to be double covered. The other guys are. Like Tyler Johnson being double covered is the lowest of defensive coordinators' worries, and yet he has the resume and some of the film in college football to say, okay, I can take people one-on-one. So that's why I think that wide receiver 3 was pretty important in this offense. It didn't work out exactly the way that they wanted to, but I think that they planned it to be even more impactful than even sometimes that we saw Brashard Perryman play really well. And so inserting Tyler Johnson into this, I think that he has the quickest path to impact for this Bucs draft class.
Who's your comp to him? Pro comp.
I didn't really get into.
Yeah, I saw Chris Godwin too.
Everyone's saying Godwin. Just
I see Chris Godwin.
What about former Buccaneer Mike
Antonio
Williams?
Bryant?
Antonio Bryant might not be a bad one. I didn't go down and do player comps this year, so I don't want to throw a name out that might be just completely wrong. But his style is just very unique. It's his own way kind of a thing. fundamentals with his feet and how he approaches the ball when it's in the air that you just go, okay, this should not work out for you as much as it does, but I feel like it does for him. And he's one of those guys that's kind of unique on film, but he produces for you. And so you like the fact that he doesn't have to be the 1 or the 2 on a team. He gets to be the 3 or the 4, and I think that's going to help him.
So Justin Watson's probably the odd man out this year because Scotty Miller's wide receiver 1.
He's wide receiver 1. Yeah, you failed to mention that earlier.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, the reason why I didn't mention it is because, like, obviously it goes Scotty Miller, then a gap, then Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. Yeah. So, I think
no.
Watson's
This is so serious.
Keep hating, bro.
I can't even joke about Mr. Hamstrings. I can't.
I heard Scotty Miller and Tom Brady been jet skiing back there at Jeter's house recently.
No, they planned on it, but on his way to his car, Scotty Miller tore another hamstring. So
fuck. Never
got in the car. Never made to the truck.
What? Hello, Mrs. Stank.
Oh, I thought you were talking about his cat because I saw his cat on screen.
They all said hi.
Trying to keep this professional as possible here, and it's turning into a Chatterbait episode.
Just barging into your she shed, bro. Like, come on, man.
This is how every porno fucking starts, isn't it?
Yeah. Is she delivering pizzas though? It doesn't really make sense.
She is.
So Justin
Talk about Vaughn.
Out.
What?
Justin Watson's probably the odd man out.
Yeah, probably. I mean, like they like how he plays on special teams, but special teams can only get you so far. I mean, if there are other guys who are bringing value to the offense more than the value that you bring on special teams, then that's not really great for you. So I got the feeling that Justin Watson wasn't exactly developing the way that they hoped that he was last year. And so that's kind of, I guess, the impression that I'm under right now. I mean, they bring in another talented wide receiver. They draft in the 5th round. It's not good news for Justin Watson. So it's kind of an uphill battle there.
I saw some fantasy rankings that have our 3rd round pick, the near and dear position to my heart. And I'm pretty sure I speak for a lot of Bucs fans, kind of like last year when we took Sean Murphy-Bunting and everybody went, who? Who is Vaughn? Because when they took him in the 3rd, when Antonio Gibson went at the top of the 3rd, I was like, okay, I have no hope now. And then they took Vaughn, and I said, who the fuck is Vaughn? Who is this kid? What's his breakdown?
I think everybody said who is
everybody.
Yeah, educate us on Vaughn.
Yeah, not me. He was my RB8, baby. What's up? He was my RB8 in this class, which it's a deep running back class, so that actually means a lot. I can't remember who was 7. Who was 7 above him? Because it was. Now you guys are gonna make me look it up. Can't remember the running back.
Did you have Anthony McFarland?
How do you not have your own rankings memorized? I don't get that. I mean, you're the draft expert. I don't have you on this show so you can look your own shit up.
Wow.
I mean, it is pretty.
Sammer.
He's so rude. He's so
rude.
It's not rude. No, this is legitimate stuff. Like people come to me that I don't, act like I don't know how to use Photoshop. I know what I'm talking about.
I can't remember who 7 was. Who was 7? Why can I not remember who 7? Oh, I think it was Josh Kelly. I think it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire was RB1, DeAndre Swift was RB2, Jonathan Taylor 3, J.K. Dobbins 4, Cam Akers 5, Zach Moss 6, Josh Kelly 7, and then Keyshawn Vaughn 8 there.
Did they make the right pick? Were you happy with them selecting him as the running back for this draft?
I think they did because of the way that you look at this roster is set up. They're certainly hoping that Ronald Jones can still be the 1st and 2nd down back, and then they want this 3rd down guy who can be who could bring some attitude, who will bring plus pass catching to what you're doing, who will bring willing pass protection to the 3rd down role. And the thing about Vaughn, and a lot of people were lower on him, his offense sucked, man, and it was not just couldn't throw the ball either. They had Kalijah Lipscomb and Jared Pinkney at wide receiver and tight end, and these were 2 guys who were poised to be mid-round draft picks going into the season, and this offense sucked so bad. I mean, I think both those guys went undrafted. It was a terrible year for Vanderbilt, and after the 2018 season where Vaughn had like 240 yards in the bowl game in 2018. Like he burst onto the scene. He torched Baylor in that bowl game. And then going into 2019, everybody knew was Keyshawn Vaughn or bust for this offense. They're either going to hand the ball off and Vaughn's going to beat us, or they're not going to beat us. Like, that was the only game plan for Vanderbilt to have any kind of success. And so in a lot of games, you just watch these teams stack the box against him. And the thing that gives me faith with Vaughn, even though he had 1,000 yards on the season, somehow by sheer willpower, is you will watch him approach defenders that are coming to tackle him, and he'll make a juke move, or he'll read the pocket, or read the run lanes the right way, and you go like, ooh, I like that vision, or I really like that move, and then you just immediately get killed, and like it wouldn't amount to anything. So it's hard to notice that, and I think that the lack of blocking in front of him didn't really allow him to get a lot of experience when it came to getting to the second level either. And I think that's the main thing with Vaughn, more so than his production getting capped. I think his development really got capped in college because of how poor the offense was around him. And so as Christian was saying earlier, Derek Mason, the head coach at Vanderbilt, said that Vaughn's going to bring Richard Sherman type of energy to this team, or this type of edge to the team. And you really like that. And I think that Vaughn is a really determined player. He's a guy who's going to be ready to get to work right away. He's not the most explosive running back, but you got to remember, I mean, like, he was picked in the 3rd round, right? I mean, a lot of their running back options that they would have had over Vaughn were already picked. And so knowing that they went safety in the 2nd round, I think that this was a nice complimentary guy to get, considering that it was a 3rd rounder and not a 2nd rounder.
Since we're on the running back discussion, I want to jump to the 7th round pick. Raymond Calais, I think his name is, or Calais. What? Yeah, exactly. that kid, he brings something different to the table. He's a little jitterbug, real quick. Seems like he's going to be, could potentially be a weapon in the passing game as well. What do you know about him?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of just what you said there. He's going to be a change of pace guy. He's going to be an electric guy. They brought him in to be dynamic. He's just new blood into the running back room, and I think that, with Dario Ogunbowale and Peyton Barber as the other guys there, along with Ronald Jones, they were like, we got to get faster.
Peyton's gone.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like last year, I'm saying, like, when that was the RB room, they said, we got to get faster. Like, we've got to get more dynamic here. They went into last season. Bruce Arians was kind of pumping up Peyton Barber, saying that, he was kind of a steady Eddie. He was a guy that they could lean on. And I think that, okay, sure, that was nice, but they realized that they can do better from the RB room. And it didn't take Bruce Arians long to look at his depth chart and say, yeah, we got to get faster in this area, because Bruce Arians is definitely a guy who has said before, just give me athletes. Get me athletes on the roster, and I'll figure out what to do with them. And that's the sign of a good head coach. I think this Calais pick is one of those where you go, okay, this is a plus athlete. He might not have a starting role on this team, but he might be able to infuse some new energy when it comes to special teams, or potentially even just being a change of pace back for them. So they're taking a chance on him because he is a plus athlete. Like you said, I like the jitterbug adjective there. I think that's kind of the role that they're hoping that he plays.
He reminds me of James White for some reason. His build, the quickness, the passing game stuff. But as it relates to Vaughn, though, I think Vaughn improves the room right away. If that's really his mentality, and me and Stank were having the conversation a couple days ago, it makes Rojo better, right? Because if you walk away from that bowl of food, I'm a dog, bro. And I'm going to take your food, and I'm not going to let you eat, Rojo. So it lights a fire under Rojo's ass, and then it just makes the whole room better. Yeah,
and I think – honestly, I think that they hoped Peyton would do that. I think that they hoped that Peyton, who is an undrafted guy, has a great story behind him, had to work to even get to the position that he had been in with the Buccaneers. They were hoping that his presence probably was going to motivate Rojo a little bit, but Peyton's just too limited. I mean, even when you gave Peyton the full workload, he just couldn't get it done for you. And I think what they're hoping here, if it's to that point, what you are saying, Christian, that Keyshawn Vaughn has a little bit more athleticism to him, can bring that home run potential. And like, if Rojo slips up, Vaughn really has the capability to pick up the load, pick up the ball, and go, okay, you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And so I don't think he's nearly as explosive as Ronald Jones is, but he could be a guy that could bring in a lot of really good energy for this team.
Do you see them playing it out where they're like a 50-50 even split in terms of how they get used, or is it going to be more Rojo and he's going to be more situational and change of pace, and maybe, for every 3 or 4 drives that Rojo gets, he's in there for 1. Is it like that, or do you see them splitting carries pretty evenly?
I don't think – I mean, to start, at least, that's not how it's going to go. Ronald Jones is going to be the guy to start. They're going to give Ronald Jones – I mean, if you thought that they gave Ronald Jones every benefit of the doubt last training camp, this training camp, I mean, he is going to get every single carry they can with the first team. It's clearly they're going to tell Ronald Jones, look, man, this is on you now. We don't really have a plan B. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn could come in, but again, he's a rookie. And so I think to start out, they're certainly going to give Ronald Jones every bit of that workload that they can possibly get out of him. And so you're going to see them lean on Ronald Jones a lot more.
I just see him pushing Rojo just simply because kind of we were talking pre-draft with Cam Akers, a guy who produced without any blocking.
Sure.
Now you've got Vaughn, who's produced without any blocking, going into a team that notoriously is asking running backs to produce without any blocking. So, Rojo didn't really face that kind of an issue in college, and so he's now seeing it in the NFL, whereas Vaughn is more adept to maybe pushing through that and kind of, grinding out and attempting to take that position from Rojo, which either makes Rojo better or Rojo ends up taking the second seat.
And that was the biggest area of concern with Rojo when he was coming in his rookie year, and that ended up coming to fruition. He just couldn't read holes, and he was not nearly as confident stepping through even when they were there. And so I would agree that was something that's really stunted his development, but you hope he's over that in year 3. You hope the offensive line as well is going to be a little bit better. So you're hoping all those things kind of come to fruition for him. But I do not doubt at all that Keyshawn Vaughn's presence is going to push Ronald Jones. I think that it is. But I know people have a tendency to get a little carried away sometimes when they look at running backs, rookie running backs specifically, and they go, oh, yeah, this guy's just like RB1, like right here. But I'm not sure.
Don't look at me like that. Clyde Edwards would have been glorious here. He would have been the rookie of the year. He would have had 2,000 yards, another fucking 800 yards catch in the passing game. He would have been incredible. So don't point at me.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a different story, but I'm just saying
he's RB1 in fantasy. RB1 in fantasy this year.
Yeah, but Christian, there was an article that came out like 2 days ago. I thought you put eyeballs on it. I shared it. And it had Vaughn at the top of the list from some NFL fantasy. Like know-it-all guy from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, but that was a fantasy football.
Yeah,
but I mean, I would think Helaire would be the one that would take more of the fantasy impact. Yeah,
but Hilaire stepping in. There's already a guy in KC. So,
Trevor,
starter.
Mm-hmm.
Do they add a veteran? Do they add a guy like a Devontae Freeman to round out the room, or you think they just roll what they got?
Would you? Probably not. I mean, I think Freeman's good, so I'd consider that depending on what his price tag is, but
probably not.
They'll probably bring in somebody for training camp. I don't know if it's going to be a big enough name to push any of these guys, if that's what you're asking. Depends. I don't remember how close are they to the cap floor after the draft. I'm not exactly sure.
Pretty close.
So, I mean, I got to think that they're going to keep their money and use and at least like stash it to maybe use when an offensive lineman might get hurt or something like that, as opposed to a running back.
But let's say Devontae Freeman's
still going to be here.
Yeah. Fuck. Let's say hey, calm the fuck. Dari Ogunbowale is underrated. Let's say Devontae Freeman wants to come in and for like 1.1 and sit the bench.
I just do like a Jameis deal.
I just pulled that number out of the air.
Like a Jameis deal.
He could come and learn behind.
It's personal.
Ronald Jones.
Well, he would come to the NFC South opponent just to add that extra oomph.
He just wants to play with. He wants to play with Brady and learn
he wants to play with Brady.
One of the greatest. You think a running back would want to play for less than what a good number of long snappers would play for? I mean, I don't know, man. Especially a guy like him. I don't see that. Trevor, who was your surprise as it relates to the Bucs draft picks? The guys ended up with. Who was the one player that you were just shocked that the Bucs ended up landing that you just did not see it happening?
I mean, it's either Tristan Wirfs or Tyler Johnson, just because I didn't think that they were going to be there. I thought Tristan Wirfs in my final predictive mock, I had him going 4 overall. Like, I thought the Giants were going to take the bait on a guy who has a really, really high ceiling. As we already explained, I think he's got some development to him, but I thought that Dave Gettleman was going to pull the trigger on the guy who might have had the highest ceiling amongst this offensive tackle class. And then Tyler Johnson, I mean, he's not a 5th-round wide receiver. He's not. He's much better than that. He's a 4th-round wide receiver, I think, at worst. I would have probably taken him at the back end of day 2, somewhere in the 3rd round. And so those are the 2 that were most shocking to me, but just because I didn't think they were going to be there. And those are 2 really big plus value picks for the Bucs.
Here's the shocker for me of the draft. It wasn't the pick. It was the move they didn't make. O.J. Howard's still on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at some of these rooms, and Ren was doing a breakdown on PewterCast about it, but if you look at our rooms, like, I wanted to bitch and complain and my feelings about the running back, not getting one of the guys I wanted, but Trevor, Jesus. If you look at the wide receiver room, look at that tight end room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, how do you I know we've been down this road before, right? Be careful, Bucs fans, but how do you stop that? Like, how do you stop that?
So are you saying that he should have been traded? You thought you thought that they were going to trade him?
I thought they were going to trade him. That was all the rumors, that we were going to trade him. We would use him as either a piece to move up or a piece to get back in the first round, or that he would just be gone because we have Gronk and we have Braden. What's the point? But
I'll tell you, if with them being above the salary cap floor, like where they are, and I think they're pretty healthy on the cap, all things considered. Certainly, they're going to be one of the lower teams, but you're competing. Like, this is what you should be. You should be lower on that list. If they weren't getting a first-round pick or a second-round pick from O.J. Howard, don't trade him. Why? There's no point. At this point, he could be worth much more to you, potentially, even if it's just in 2020. Even if you lose him for nothing, you are all in for the next 2 years. You have to make 2020 and 2021 as good of a roster as you can possibly be. You have Tom Brady for those 2 years. So if you weren't getting a first or a second round pick back for the guy that you drafted number 19 overall just 3 years ago, don't move on from him. Just keep him. Who cares? Who cares? At that point, he would get you more value
on the field,
on a whim of him improving or just being in the room as an option, than he would a fourth round pick. Who gives a crap about a fourth round pick at that point? Just keep him on the roster. He would do you a lot more good than any kind of fourth round pick that you're going to get over the next 2 years. And so I was with you on the fact that I thought that they were going to pull the trigger on a trade in day 2. But after he did not go, after we were about halfway through the third round, I went, they better not trade him because they're not going to get anybody that's going to be able to impact this team over the next 2 years the way that O.J. Howard might be able to. And we think about this too. Gronk's around, and I get it. He's going to be on for $10 million a year this year, but next year, Gronk's going to sign a much cheaper deal, and who knows if he might even be back. You don't know. And so if you were to trade O.J. Howard, okay, then maybe at the end of 2020, maybe Gronk gets hurt again. God forbid he gets hurt again, and then he just goes, man, I'm done. Like, this injury is too much. It was fun to come back for a year, but I just can't do this rehab thing again. Then you got Cam Brate, and that's it, right? So at that point, once they passed about the second to early third round thing, the trade value just didn't make any sense. You just keep him on the roster. What I'm hoping
for is, and you remember the conversations were had when he was signed. You remember when we got Vita Vea? And at one point, Jason Light had to have a conversation with him, which I think was an indictment on Dirk Cutter. Like, hey, you need to play a little meaner. And then he had that finish, that strong finish. And then we brought in Sue. And everybody was like, they brought in Sue not only because of what he can do, but what he brings to that room and the attitude that he brings. And he's going to help Vita kind of portray that attitude or have that attitude, that mean streak. I'm hoping that Gronk has the same, rubs off the same on OJ, if you know what I mean. OJ looks all of what Gronk is. Like, body-wise, he's what you draw up when it's a fucking tight end. He's incredible. He's fucking Adonis. He can block, he can run, he can do it all. So what I'm hoping is that Gronk just helps him with that I love football, infectious, I will do whatever. Like he said in his press conference, well, are you going to do this? You can play football. He's like, I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do. I don't care. If they ask me to block all game, I'm going to block all game. Mm-hmm. I hope he brings that to OJ. What do you think?
Some of that stuff too, man. Like I was thinking about it the other day was, I feel like OJ came into a scenario where he's from Alabama and you don't do anything but win. And maybe there's a little bit of complacency or something that he just wasn't maybe used to. I don't know. I don't want to say not used to putting in the work, but something didn't click right away where he seemed motivated or hungry enough. And we said it during our draft show that if Gronk does anything or does nothing at all but this one thing, and that's end up motivating and kind of teaching OJ some of that hatred for losing and that hunger, that dog that Gronk has. If OJ can add that to what he already physically looks like and the tools and talent that he has it's like it'll be impossible to cover him on top of the weapons that we have now. Like,
yeah,
he just needs somebody maybe to show him that, or maybe ignite that in him. I mean, we've all seen his body at training camp, Stan Chasm at the top of the list of, the Mr. Beck's 2020.
I just sat back down.
He's going to be
talking
beautiful.
about OJ Howard.
He's going to be beautiful with that baby oil rubbed all over his body, but it would feel a lot better if he was getting rubbed down with baby oil and also scoring like 25 touchdowns. But
yeah, the thing with OJ Howard, and we all kind of looked at him when he was coming out of college, and we were like, how did this guy get underutilized this much? Like, how did Nick Saban not use this guy more? I mean, now we're kind of seeing it, right? Nick Saban's not in the business of losing football games, okay? He works his ass off to get the most talented, the most athletic, the biggest mismatch players on his team every single year, and O.J. Howard was one of them, and they did not get him the ball. Nick Saban didn't forget that O.J. Howard was on the roster. There was something up there. And a lot of us thought like, he was just overlooked. I mean, it was a crowded thing. They weren't trying to do that. They were trying to run the ball, blah, blah, blah. Here we are 3 years in, and O.J.'s had some really good yards per catch numbers. He really has. But he's been injured, and he's also just had some mental lapses, both when it comes to blocking and pass catching. And it's just been frustrating. He just has not been able to mentally and consistently put it all together the way that you would hope that his talent did. And it was so funny because as I was reading the trade rumors, I also got to read a lot of people's perspective on O.J. Howard. And for people that aren't in Tampa, for people that have not lived this over the last 3 years or covered the team, when people got really excited about Gronkowski, the national people from other fan bases were like, why are you excited? There's a tight end better than Gronkowski who's already on the roster. And I'm like, that's a very interesting take for a guy who has literally never had the stats of Gronk's worst years. Like, people view O.J. Howard around the country right now the same way people viewed O.J. Howard coming out of Alabama. They think that O.J. Howard is like a top 3 tight end in the making still. And I was watching these opinions fly, and I was like, y'all have not been paying attention. And look, the Bucs don't get a lot of national attention, so like I totally get it. I just thought it was really, really funny because how they view O.J. Howard right now is how Bucs fans were viewing O.J. Howard 3 years ago, and that's just not the case.
Do you think it's maturity?
OJ.
Oh, there you go. You think it's maturity or ability?
I mean, it's certainly not ability, and I don't know if it's maturity because I can't necessarily speak to it because I don't know him. It's not like he's a personal friend of mine or anything. So I hate to like speak on a guy's character when I don't personally know it, but he just clearly has not been able to put together the kind of talent that he has. We've seen it in flashes, but it just seems like whether it's just like getting catches or completing blocks or just being where you're supposed to be, he just hasn't mentally been able to put it together the way that we thought that he would be able to. And I don't know if it's a work ethic thing or a care about football thing. I have no idea. All I know is he has not been as consistent as they've wanted him to be. I mean, Dirk Cutter tried to prioritize him. I think Bruce Arians tried to as well. Nick Saban well before that. And it just seems like with every coach that comes by, yeah, O.J. Howard will show up in flashes, but he's never been this complete takeover tight end that I think a lot of people look at his talent, his athletic ability, his size warrant him to be. And that's just kind of what's been the case for OJ over the last 5 years, even going back to his time at Alabama.
It sucks because you look at a guy like – you're going to hold him to the bar, right? You look at a guy like Kels, who's just so tenacious, kills himself on every play, attacks the ball, attacks the defender. Is just such a savage out there. And
he doesn't look the part. He doesn't look the part.
Not even close.
Kelsey does.
Well, I'm saying you put them side by side.
Not next to OJ. Not next to OJ.
OJ's like built like a Greek god. You would think this guy would be out there just manhandling motherfuckers, and he doesn't.
I would put Kittle more in that category.
Yeah, so
Kittle doesn't look like anything incredible.
No, Kittle looks like a fullback who just accidentally got to play, but he's beating everybody. It doesn't make sense.
Let's
but a guy
talk
like
about
OJ,
long snappers, though.
No, wait, hold on. Let's shift back to the draft. We'll get to that. Don't worry. Let's shift back to the draft for one last thing. I wanted to get Trevor's grades on the overall draft for the Bucs, and then maybe the top four or all the picks one by one in terms of an A to an F. what you graded them out as at the end of the day with the Bucks.
So I didn't do like a grades article for the Draft Network. So what I'm about to give off is literally just off the top of my head. So
I asked the good questions, man. I do.
So
Are we breaking news? Are we breaking news right now?
Breaking fucking news.
Wow.
Hold on. I'm tweeting it out.
I'm tweeting it out.
Trevor says.
Make sure you write in there, courtesy of the well-chiseled beard, we have breaking news.
I would say that the Tristan Wirfs pick is an A-. I thought they showed really nice patience there. The only reason it's not a full-blown A is because I think that the Bucks were really looking to move up to get a different player, probably Jedrick Wills. And so even though I think that it is good that they were able to stay in range of where they were initially picked, I think that Tristan Wirfs is an A-. I'd say the Antoine Winfield Jr. pick is an A- as well. The only reason it wouldn't be higher or what I'm taking against this is the fact that it wasn't a running back. It did take away from another position that I think that they really needed. But in terms of what he can bring in the position that he fills, the role that he fills, more importantly, with this team and looking where the current safeties are, I think that's an A- as well. Keyshawn Vaughn, I will say that this is a B pick. I like this pick. I really do. A lot of other people I think would have probably given it a much lower grade, but I'm higher on Keyshawn Vaughn. So that's going to lead me to give it to a better grade. Tyler Johnson's an A. There's no other way around it. I've said before, this guy should not have been a fifth round pick. He should have been more of a mid round pick, probably a late day 2 guy. And for them to get him at 161, that's crazy. Where they did, I think that that's an A pick. I like Khalil Davis. I like this pick in the 6th round. I think it's a B pick because they address a need on the defensive line, not a starter way, but they needed a rotational guy. And I think Khalil Davis brings plus size athleticism to what they're trying to do. I mean, he allows him to stay dynamic. He can play either spots of the interior defensive tackle role that the Bucks are trying to fill when it comes to either Sue or Vea. I think that he could play both of those spots, given his track background and given how explosive he is as a 300-pound player.
He's Bo Allen. He replaces Bo Allen for us.
He's more
athletic. He just replaces
way
Bo
higher.
Allen.
He's a much higher ceiling than Bo Allen. But yes, I mean, he replaces Bo Allen's spot on the roster, but I think he gives you even better upside for it. Chappelle Russell, he's a violent dude, man. And so I'm going to give this pick a B-. I think that it's a nice addition when it comes to the 7th round because you got to have expectations, right? I mean, it's a 7th round pick. It's not like you could put him up against the guys that you were taking in the 3rd round. And so I think that that's a good chance there. And then the Raymond Calais pick, I'll give this a B- just because I understood what they were doing. I understood kind of the way that they were trying to infuse some more speed and playmaking into the running back room. It's kind of just pick your poison really with some of these, or pick your preference is a better way to say it when it comes to these late last round guys. And so for the roles that I think they were trying to fill, I think they did a good job with it. So I don't know what the exact grade point average is there, but I really do think the Bucks would have come away with an A- draft. I thought they killed it. They were absolutely a top 5 draft in the NFL in terms of the players that they were able to acquire, the weaknesses that they were able to attack and address, as well as looking towards the future and the highest impact players, both short and long term. So I really do. I think the Bucks killed this draft. I thought they did a great job.
I think the interesting thing about those the last picks, the 5, 6, and 7, the 5, 6, and the 2 7s, is that legitimately I can see all those guys sticking. Where usually 7th rounders and 6th rounders are like, camp body, camp fodder, whatever. Maybe they'll make it, maybe they won't. I can see all of those guys legitimately sticking. Mm-hmm. Davis because he's filling that rotational role at D tackle, like you said. Mm-hmm. The linebacker because he's explosive as fuck, and he had 2 injuries, but he's going to be a special teams menace. He lights people up, like you said. He's a firecracker. Mm-hmm. And then you have the joystick that again special teams, and he brings that different element to the running back room. I think they all can stick, which is pretty fucking good.
And they're not going to be expensive. I hope.
No, I don't know if you guys touched on it while I was gone. Any of the UFAs that the Bucks signed that you're familiar with that you got excited about? I know the names I knew was Michael Divinity from LSU, and then I heard
the most interesting one.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Divinity was definitely the most interesting one because he was a starter for LSU before he ended up kind of getting out of there, and it was a weird situation because he left the team and then he came back. And then he played for a little bit. So I'm not exactly sure what that situation was. I'm sure that they did their digging there, but started on the national championship team or the early part in the year. So you have to like that, especially from a guy who's playing an important position like edge rusher. But the big one, this is the one that I really liked. Parnell Motley, the cornerback from Oklahoma.
Cornerback.
He was the addition. He was one of the best additions in the UDFA tracker, like throughout the entire league. Motley is going to give up some catches. I mean, he just is. That's the nature of what he plays. But he's a fearless man coverage corner who I think that you could teach to really play and be a good depth piece on this team. I think that he's got the mentality that you would want to be an aggressive kind of cornerback. I was really surprised that Parnell Motley went undrafted. Really surprised. And so for the Bucs to pick him up, I know that he thought about signing with the Vikings, but then ended up choosing Tampa Bay as his destination. And so I think that he believes that it's a young cornerback room in Tampa Bay. He has a chance to be CB4 on this team and potentially stick on the roster. And so he's definitely the guy that I'd be most excited about as a Bucs fan.
Bye,
right,
MJ Stewart.
So thank God. So now we can shift. We can finally shift and have a discussion. Some news came down about some long snappers and punters today. I know it doesn't seem like, heavy news, especially from a Bucs fan perspective, but
fuck them.
Still, it's in the news. So, Trevor, I think you know what we're talking about. What are your thoughts on the latest in the long snapper signings as it relates to the NFL free agency?
Obviously, a play on Jameis Winston signing for the amount less than 6 long snappers have in the NFL, which is wild. The Jameis Winston contract is so puzzling. I understand what he's doing. Okay, I want to make that very clear. He is going to the Saints because those 30 interceptions clearly hurt his market a lot more than he thought they did, right? I mean, the only starting job that he was possibly going to get in the NFL was Tampa if Tom Brady and Teddy Bridgewater both said no. This was the only place in the NFL that he was going to get a starting gig at. And we're even finding out that he wasn't even a priority backup for a lot of these teams just because they didn't want to deal with it. And that I understand, because when you have a backup quarterback, you kind of want a guy where you know what to expect, right? I talked about this at length on a different podcast. Jameis just can't be the backup anywhere, because this is a guy who has led the league in passing. He was second in the NFL in passing touchdowns last season. He is still relatively young. He's a former Heisman Trophy winner, former national champion. If you have any uncertainty at your starting quarterback position whatsoever, your fan base and even your locker room at maybe one point is going to be completely divided. So he can't, it's not like, wow, look, Jameis would be better than all of these other backups. Okay, you're right talent-wise, but to be a fit, I mean, he might not be. It's a really tricky situation. So in New Orleans, it makes sense because Drew Brees is the guy. He's never not going to be the guy. No matter what people think of Jameis Winston, this is Drew Brees' team. He gets to learn under Drew Brees, and he gets to learn under Sean Payton, which is good for Jameis because he signed a one-year deal. He gets to put this under his resume, and even if he never plays a single snap in 2020, he will go into 2021's free agency period and already have more leverage than he had this past year, which is kind of crazy to think because he led the NFL in passing. That's just crazy to think that him riding the bench for a full year will be better for him than what this past year was, but that's the reality of what it was. With all that said, I understand why he went to New Orleans because I think it makes the most sense for him long term. I cannot, for the life of me, understand that he's just signed a deal for $1.1 million. I do not get it. Teddy Bridgewater, 1 year ago, who had thrown 23 total passes since his gruesome leg injury in 2015, signed a 1-year, $7.25 million deal with the Saints to be a backup, to be the exact same position that Jameis Winston just signed for. This guy led the NFL in passing the year before and is getting less than 7 times what Bridgewater got from the year before. Does it not have anything to do with the fact that they just signed Hill to? No, I mean,
over Hill.
It has everything. It has everything to do with that, but there's no way Jameis, the deals that he quote unquote may have turned down from around the NFL, which I don't know how true that is. I had not been made aware of those reports. I'm not sure the validity of them. I'm sure that there are other teams who were inquiring about Jameis Winston, but whether or not giving him a contract offer, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to believe that at this point Jameis wouldn't have taken a deal that would have been significantly more than this, like an $8 million a year backup deal, because that is just so much money to leave out there. Whereas if he wouldn't have started this year, it would have been the same situation as next year. I just can't believe we got to this low point for him. I know what he's doing. I understand the plan. He's going to New Orleans. He's going to learn behind these guys. He's going to have leverage to him when it comes to next offseason. How in the world is this all he got?
It doesn't
and how
make
did he settle
Blaine,
for it?
Blaine
but
Gabbert
I mean,
signed for $4.
But if you're betting on
million.
yourself and you've got 40 some odd million already in the bank, it makes sense, because I understand the angle of, all right, they're going to see me in practice. Their starting quarterback is probably most likely going to retire at the end of the season. If I have a chance of taking over a job, would I not have the best opportunity in this scenario for anyone to even think that I've improved from the 30 interceptions and all that
He
shit?
would, but I can't believe that he has to take this situation and also $1.1 million, right? I mean, we were told that he basically said no to when the Bucs offered him a contract, what was it, last year? And it was probably a little around where the franchise tag value was. And then we talked about him probably seeking around $30 million a year. He just signed for $1 million. There is no guarantee in this business that you even get to the next contract you think that you are. So that's why it's crazy to me, because $1.1 million for the quarterback that Jameis Winston is, both the good and the bad, when you look at what he has done, there's no way he should have signed for that low, even if you are Winston's biggest critic. The payout for him could be astronomical. I totally hear you, Sammer. If it all works out for him the way that he thinks it does, it's going to be a big payout.
We've talked so much about him being the guy that if it was possible to play football for free, Jameis is the guy. He's at the front of the line. He's playing 100%, for free, right?
Yes.
So why not bet on yourself when that's the thing he does? I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to go out there and I'll get my pay. And he just maybe that money part doesn't matter. I'm totally different. I agree with you. I'm like,
matter.
give me the most.
Sammer,
I mean, if you made
Stank said it best early on Twitter, man. And Trevor was kind of alluding to that. If he cashes in, great, it works out for him. But you know what else could happen? He could be playing in a fucking meaningless preseason game in the fucking third, fourth quarter, and some Joe Jalopy who's trying to make the fucking team, trying to be Superman, dives at him, tears his fucking knee, and he lost. It's gone. It's done.
You know what?
Yeah, but he's still got 40-something million in the bank, and that can happen as a starter.
How do you know that? How do you know he has 40 million in the bank?
Come on. You think he's got 20? Still 20 million more than I got.
I just can't can't believe that he took that little of money, because I totally get the plan. I understand the plan of what he's trying to do. I really do. I understand it. I can't believe it came down to him. If he wanted this plan to happen, him saying yes to a $1.1 million deal. I just can't believe it. You are totally right that if any player in the NFL is going to play for free, it's Jameis Winston 100%. No doubt about it. If this league was yeah, man, we're shutting down, we can't pay any players, Jameis would be like, all right, guys, you want to head out back to the field? We could just get a game together. We could just start playing, blah, blah, blah. That's literally Jameis. I just can't believe, guys, Ryan Griffin might make more money than Jameis Winston this year.
That's crazy.
Ryan Griffin has played 10 total snaps in 7 years of his NFL career. He backed up Jameis Winston unequivocally for the last 5 seasons, and he might make more money than Jameis Winston might make this year. So that's the part that's crazy.
Why did he do it then? I understand what you're saying. I totally get it.
It's personal.
Okay, but you think any player in the league doesn't take any opportunity to add fuel to their fire? I just don't think it's strictly that. Stank's idea is that he signed with the Saints because he was always wanted to be a Saint and he wants to fuck the Bucs. I'm sure there's a little minute part of it, but I mean, it can't be entirely that.
So my thought here with Winston is he really, really prioritized getting in with the Saints and under Breeze and with Peyton more than clearly making money, because I even think, and this is what I think is probably going to happen with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's going to wait it out. He's going to wait till hopefully all this COVID-19 stuff is past us. Teams open their facilities. They can get him in it. They can get him in with their doctors. They can see that his shoulder is okay. And then Cam is going to wait until a team during training camp or the preseason needs a quarterback. And that's when Cam, I think, is going to strike. That is what I am weighing against Winston's current decision, because Winston could have waited, right? I mean, like I think he could have waited, and I think that a job would have opened up where he might have even been able to start this year. But he thinks that learning under Breeze and Peyton is worth more than, because look, if that would have happened, Jameis would have got probably close to $10 million this year. And $10 million as opposed to one, especially when you know the uncertainty of, Stank, what he was saying on Twitter, that's worst case scenario. You hope that it never happens, but like that's a reality for a lot of these players. And a lot of times it is you kind of got to get what you're able to get when you can while you're healthy. And it is Jameis's life. It is his decision to make. I just think that it's so crazy that a player who led the NFL in passing yards last year, who was second in the NFL in passing TDs, even with all the turnovers, just signed a deal for $1.1 million. It's so crazy for me to believe.
How does his agent allow that, dude?
Ultimately,
I was going to ask, like,
it's Jameis's decision.
Is it one of those
I get that. It is.
Is it one of those things where they
just
was it one of those things where they were just like at a point where they were just embarrassed, or there was some sort of shame and, oh, look, he asked for $30 million, on the streets, that's what we heard, and now no one wants him? Was there any sort of, you know what, this is just embarrassing, let's just take a deal that puts in a good situation for the next year? But again, it still doesn't make sense from a $1 million to a $10 million standpoint. But
unless his market was truly nothing, then I think that it was a little bit of a panic deal, because I think that the agents and even Jameis Winston can defend it a little bit, saying, look, we go to the best situation possible. You get to be on a team that's got a lot of experience, a great head coach, a really great teacher and mentor in Drew Brees. You're probably going to make a deep playoff run. Who knows? You might be able to come in and play for the Saints. Like, who knows? The situation itself, like we've said, it makes sense, and I get it. But unless there was absolutely no market for Jameis Winston, which would be, holy cow, unprecedentedly strange, then I do still think that it was a little bit of a panic deal, because I think that they could have waited, got something close to $10 million even for a one-year deal, and Winston could have instead been able to potentially start this year, or at least be a preferred backup.
The other part of that, though, is let's say he does go to start somewhere. I don't know, Jacksonville, right? And he looks average again, or, bad, a lot of turnovers. You only get so many shots at it, right?
Oh, no,
you can throw your way out of the league. So
no doubt about it.
I'm betting they weighed that as well.
But again, to go back to the point of like Winston being a guy to bet on himself, because I thought of this too, right? I mean, if he goes to a bad situation and just signs for the most money, that could be detrimental to him too, because if he has one more situation where he throws more picks than turnover than touchdowns or whatever it is, I mean, like, he's done. Like, that contract will then be the last contract that he signs. But I have a hard time believing that Jameis Winston would go, yeah, I'm not good enough to start right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a hard time believing that's reality, because has Jameis ever felt like that ever to you?
Check your sheet.
So like, that's why I just don't even – I hear that reality. I don't think that it was in the car. Like, I just can't convince myself that Jameis Winston looked at the potential to start elsewhere in the NFL and went, yeah, you know what? I'm just not ready. That's never been Jameis ever at any point. Maybe it is, and I'd be convinced otherwise. But this whole situation for the money that he signed for, it's on him. He's betting on himself, no doubt about it. I got no problem with that. I just couldn't believe it came at the price of $1.1 million.
The whole play behind Breeze for a year and playing behind Sean Payton's system for a year, to me, is ridiculous. Okay, if you're not going to stay there, then what good is it learning Sean Payton's system in New Orleans if you're going to end up somewhere else next season?
Yeah, but he's betting on staying there. He's basically saying, I'm
that's the only reason. That's the only reason. He looked at the situation and said, Breeze
I don't think it is. I don't think that it is. I don't think that that's the only avenue. I honestly think that we have seen that time can sometimes be the biggest ally for backup quarterbacks. If he never plays a snap and he gets to go to teams next year and his agents get to go, look, this is a changed man, okay? He learned under Breeze for an entire year. He learned under Sean Payton. Hell, you want to know what the Saints are doing? This guy's got all the information you want. So at that point, it becomes an intel signing, and you can BS your way into saying that all this time past is a convincing tool to say, my guy's not the same guy that threw 30 interceptions. He had a whole year to learn under some of the best teachers that there are in the NFL. And I think that that's absolutely a negotiating tactic for him, even if it's not with the Saints.
So they're playing they're playing the my superstar has been humbled card type of approach. Yeah,
Time is
if he
such
gets
a
any
great
more
ally.
humble, if he gets any more humble, bro, he apologizes for everybody else's mistakes.
He does.
Constantly.
He does. Can't
That's
break
his
out the ball.
problem. He's
I got to
too
throw a better
fucking
ball.
humble.
He's too fucking nice.
He needs to sack up and stop being so fucking humble. And listen, if you're going to, if Pittsburgh was a real thing, like that's one of the rumors. Citro put it out there, and he's getting shit on because even the Pittsburgh media is saying that was a false a report. But anyways, if Pittsburgh was serious about bringing Jameis in, and you want to learn behind a guy, yeah, I get Drew Brees is one of the GOATs. You want to learn behind a guy whose skills translate to what you do. If I look at Jameis Winston and I look at Drew Brees, they're totally different quarterbacks to me. It's not X's and O's. It isn't the issue with Jameis, okay? It's the ability to get through his progressions, not give away the play with his eyes, get the ball out of his hands quickly and accurately. Drew Brees is not going to be able to teach him how to fucking do that.
Yeah, but the support system in New Orleans is better than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't even have an offensive coordinator worth a damn, from my opinion at least, versus Sean Payton, versus an offense that has put their quarterback in a position consistently, no matter who they are, to succeed. They made Teddy Bridgewater look like a fucking beast. Okay?
Yeah, but is that because
and
Sean
he's
Payton,
not even close in terms of talent to Jameis. So
is that because Sean Payton's the quarterback whisperer too, or is that because Bridgewater was put into a machine? Okay, and he sat down in the driver's seat, and it was
Don't crash.
Yeah, don't crash this fucking car.
I look at it from my perspective. If I was offered an opportunity, say, to be an intern for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a designer, and I would learn from the greatest, right? And I would only get paid X amount of dollars, and then eventually I might have a chance to take over. I understand that. Like, okay, but I wouldn't want to go fucking, do that with somebody who I think I might be better than, or the scheme doesn't really teach me. I want to learn. So I understand the angle of I'm going to learn from this team as opposed to going to Pittsburgh and just sitting there. You made more money, yeah, but I'm just sitting there, and I don't really – Jameis has never cared about the money possibly compared to other guys. So maybe it's just simply that. That's how I look at it. I really don't care. I'm not sitting there like rooting for him to get a chance to play and whoop the Bucs' ass. I don't give a shit. I don't care about all that.
Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Let's get to the real shit because Trevor
Let's get to the brisket. Let's get to the brisket. I'm getting hungry
because Trevor works for TDN, but uniquely Trevor is a Bucs fan, a hardcore Bucs fan, right?
Living in Carolina.
Trevor. Forget all the scenarios and he this and that. He signed here for 1.1 and
this is gonna be good.
He's going somewhere else.
He's leading us. I know.
We all know how this ends, right, Trevor?
Can't wait for this to turn into a running back question.
It always
Clyde
does.
Edwards-Helaire.
Do you think Jameis could possibly end up converting to running back?
Hold on. Does this end the way we all know? Because you fuckers know how this ends, right? We can paint whatever scenario he's going to go somewhere else. Does this end with us paying for this for the next 10 years? Does this end with us literally having to see him in black and gold for the next
Tampa
decade?
in the Super Bowl less than a year from now?
He said it in his farewell. Thank you, Tampa. I'll see you in February.
Yeah.
Does this end the way all Bucs fans know it's already been written? Fuck.
Dude, it would be so shitty if he ends up like stepping in for Breeze and like the NFC.
That's what I'm saying. But let Trevor
beats us in the NFC Championship. Oh my God, I would. Oh no.
First of all, I'm a credentialed media member, so I'm not a fan of any team in the NFL.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah, dude.
Just had to throw that out there real quick.
He does not like the Bucs. The Bucs are trash.
Although I did grow up 45 minutes south of Raymond James Stadium.
And best friends with Jerry McCoy. Go. Keep going. Sorry.
We'll watch Marvel movies together.
I don't think that this ends in a nightmare scenario for the Buccaneers. I don't envision Jameis Winston coming out to kill the Buccaneers and be the next Drew Brees for the next 10 years. And that's because I do think that Jameis is who he is, the good and the bad. Not that I don't think that he could improve, and I think that learning behind Brees would be great, but over the last 7 years of watching Jameis, it's become more and more evident that first year that we ever saw him, that redshirt freshman year at Florida State, the one where he won the Heisman Trophy and was a national champion, he threw 40 touchdowns and 10 interceptions that year. That was efficient. That was explosive. That was a gunslinger. That was everything the Bucs wanted out of their number 1 overall pick. The following year and every year that he had when he was on the Buccaneers, he never even got close to that kind of efficiency. That's just not the kind of guy he is. He's had different quarterback coaches. He's had different offensive coordinators. He's had different head coaches. Some would bring that to a negative, but I would like to think that at least one of them might be able to get through to Winston and turn him into somebody different, or at least improve what he was able to do. I think the strengths of what Winston was able to do were improved over the last 5 years in Tampa, especially as the coaches got better, but the negatives always remained. And so a change of scenery, I think, was really necessary for him, but I'm not going to sit here and think that he's going to suddenly become Drew Brees or he's going to suddenly have the efficiency of Aaron Rodgers, because that's just never, ever been him. And if it is, it will be a true 180 turn of who he is as a quarterback, and that is something that, man, good on Sean Payton for unlocking, because so many coaches have tried to since the day that he stepped on campus at Florida State and haven't been able to do it. But in terms of your question, is this going to be the biggest regret the Bucs have ever had? I don't think so.
Sean Payton's going to do it. They're going to do a fucking 30 for 30 on it. Fuck my life.
I thought you.
I
really
just want to point
to
out
know if he could play running back. Do you think he could? I really want to know.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen the effort that he's given sometimes on certain run plays? I mean, yeah, I do think that he could play running back.
He doesn't have the quick feet. I'm good.
There you go, man. That's the running back you've been looking for, Christian. He's been here the whole fucking time. We just had him in the wrong position.
Hey, listen, I just want to – we can leave this behind if you want to. I just want to point out one thing. The Bucs offense last year put up more yards, the same amount of points as New Orleans, and we have better weapons than they do outside of Kamara. So, yeah, I get he's going to this legendary system with Sean Payton, but we had a pretty fucking good offense here last year with him at the helm. So I don't know. To me, people are putting Payton and Brees on this pedestal and thinking that Jameis is just going to learn from them through osmosis, and I don't know.
I don't think anyone's doing
I'm salty.
that.
I'm salty.
I think you're just like you're absorbing what people are saying in a totally different way than I think it's meant. Even like when Jameis came out and made comments, we were like, oh, he's shitting on his ex-coach. I mean, no, you can't say something nice about your current coaches. I mean, without it coming off as a diss to your former coaches. Maybe it's just a nice thing to say.
He said he's going to Harvard. So where's he been at before that? HCC?
You think he's not human in any like tiny aspect of it, though? I mean, I'm sure maybe some of that is like a fuck you to the Bucs. Maybe it is. Maybe
that's
it's not.
my point.
But you're just like way up here on this shit, dude. Like,
because it is.
You're way over the top on it.
By the way, fuck Jameis, fuck the Saints. I gotta go, guys. I gotta get on another call for the barbershops because DeSantis just got done with his press conference. So.
Well, man, I think we had fun hanging out anyway. So
always,
this is a good spot to end this. Trevor, thank you so much for hanging out and spilling knowledge all over our lack of knowledge when it comes to the draft and what the Bucs did. If you want to go ahead and let people know where they can follow you on Twitter, I guess you guys are on YouTube too now. So plug away.
No, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I always enjoy chomping it up with you guys. At Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter, TRE at the end. That's where you can find all my stuff. And then thedraftnetwork.com. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff, recapping all the 2020 NFL draft classes. And then if you are sick in the head like me and are already looking forward to some of the 2021 prospects and the guys that are going to be competing and some of the stars of next year's college football season, we got a list of those guys too. So if you're interested in either 2020 stuff or 2021 stuff, we got you covered over at the Draft Network.
I clicked on it. I'm not going to lie. I clicked on it for one reason, though. I wanted to see where you had the Bucs picking. I just wanted to see where the Bucs are picking.
26. They take a running back. I think he has them taking a running back at the first draft.
26th. God, can we stop with the running back shit? Like, I'm over it. I'm happy with Vaughn. Goddamn. Jesus.
Yeah, take some dude named like Chicken Wing or some shit like that. Something about, and it goes by nickname as Chicken Wing.
You already want
I am over the running
and Clemson's running back next year.
I am over. Well, I like Clemson's running back a lot, but I'm over the running back thing. It wasn't running back as a position. It was mainly Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We know that, but I'm over it. I'm over it.
Thanks for hanging out, Trevor. Thanks for hanging out, Stank and Chicken Breast. let's end this podcast the only way we know how to end it, and that is ready the fucking cannons. Go Bucks.
Motor.